Hello, everyone. In this video, I cannot believe how fortunate I am to sit down one of my favorite filmmakers alive, the amazing, the Oscar-winning Sebastán Lelio. But we were talking a little bit off air. We were showing each other our posters and celebrating cinema. So I was like, we have to get some of this on air because we could talk all day about film. I don't even know where to begin. Sebastian is the director behind films such as Disobedience, A Fantastic Woman, Gloria Bell, one of my favorite Irish films ever made, The Wonder, which we'll be talking about, of course, and his newest film, La Ola slash The Wave, is set to be released soon later this year. Sir, thank you so much for taking the time to come on. How are you doing today?
I'm very good. Thank you, Daniel, for inviting me.
I cannot tell you how excited I am. I've wanted to talk to you ever since. I mean, the first film of yours I saw was The Wonder. And I
Mm.
watched that and I was like, okay, so this is directed by an Irish filmmaker I've never heard of. So I looked you up and I was like, he's Chilean. And so then I went back and I watched Gloria Bell and I watched the rest of your works and I was really just kind of fascinated by your approach.
Thank
But I
you.
mean, so right now you're actually in Chile right now.
I'm in Chile right now, which is where I am from.
Yeah.
Because of my job, I'm always coming and going, but I hadn't filmed in Chile since I did A Fantastic Woman,
Wow.
which is from 2000 and I shot it in 17.
Yeah.
And that that happened to be the first Chilean film in history that won an Oscar for Best Feature Film International. And after that, I've been shooting abroad,
Yeah.
and then like 6 years after that moment, I shot again in Spanish this film called La Ola or The Wave, which will come out this year.
Wow. And are you in post-production right now? Or are you totally wrapped?
Um, like almost totally wrapped, almost like
Yeah.
last details, like but
Is
but
is it
it's
kind of
it's finished.
is it kind of a process of you're kind of going back a little bit like you're sleeping and you'll think of one thing and you're going back to the editing, or is it just kind of small finishing touches that you're putting on the film?
No, because we locked editing several months ago,
Wow.
but because it's a musical, it's a quite dense film to post
Yeah.
produce. It has a lot of layers and
Wow.
choirs and big numbers with a lot of people dancing, and to mix that and to color that, to grade it, um, took a while.
Yeah. And what is post-production like for you as a filmmaker? Do you enjoy it? Is it your favorite aspect? Or is it at first horrible? Because you hear stories about like Scorsese when he first edited Taxi Driver and he was suicidal. He had a gun in his hands because he thought it wasn't going well. Do you enjoy the process of post-production? What is that process like for you?
I do. Yeah, I
Really?
do. I always write or co-write my films. I've had That's how it has been.
Yeah.
And I writing is very difficult to me.
Mm.
Um, because it, it can be quite scary to see the blank page and to see only possibilities, and then because you're wearing two hats, because you're the
Yeah.
one that will have to direct it, you're going like, maybe not, maybe that's too hard to film. So it's quite schizophrenic because you're like
Yeah.
being the writer, being the director, but after a certain moment in the process when things click,
Yeah.
writing is really a great source of joy and inspiration. And
Yeah.
then pre-producing is tough
Really?
because that's like preparing for, I don't like to use war metaphors, like military metaphors, but Bresson talks about preparing a film like one prepares a battle.
Yeah.
So and then but you might lose the battle.
Yeah.
So but you need that sort of mindset to 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 prepare the conditions that will allow you know, yourself and everyone that's co-creating with you for the things you're looking for to merge out of chaos
Yeah.
and complications and obstacles and not enough money, which is a basic deal in this
Yeah, yeah,
work. Uh, and then filming is, yeah, it's like being it's like being at war in a certain way, or I
yeah.
mean, Jane Campion says like shooting a scene is like being in an emergency room in a public hospital, and someone enters like about to die, completely wounded, and you have 5 minutes to either save his or her life or not. And
Wow.
so shooting feels a little bit like that. Of course, it's a bit of an exaggeration, but then when somehow out of chaos and um, and all these people that is, you need to help everyone come together. Um, when out of that things um, reach a certain level of synchronicity and they click
Yeah,
and
yeah,
the scene appears, it's very rewarding and beautiful. And then everyone goes away and you are alone with your editor.
yeah,
And that's one of my favorite parts of the process, because you're finally, so to say, making it, with the
yeah,
materials and combining your materials and trying to, out of that combination, try to elevate them, right?
yeah,
And you can do amazing things in editing. And uh, that's very beautiful, and it's very intimate. It feels a little bit like writing again
yeah,
in
yeah,
terms of the process. And then a new team comes in, which is the post-producing team or post-production team, and you are already like exhausted, and they are like, "Woo, we are about to start." And but it's also great because even though it's can be tedious,
yeah,
waiting for VFX,
yeah,
doing ADR, correcting, improving, repairing. It's slow, but at scoring it, But at some
yeah.
point, when things start to also like merge from the process, the film grows and grows and grows. Um, and you try to make it grow to its, most uh, for to the better possible version of the film.
Wow.
So the aesthetics and the sound and the music and the VFX, everything like converges, and that's also slow, very slow. But
Yeah.
then when you finally like can see it with all the elements there, it's like
Wow.
hallelujah, because it's been a long ride, and you're finally, hopefully, in front of a piece that is hopefully alive, and
Yeah.
that, like a teacher I had in film school in Chile, he used to say, um, like good storytelling or good films should at the same time flow
Yeah.
and vibrate.
Wow.
So things have to flow effortlessly. You're kind of like, flowing through the story,
Yeah.
and then but within each scene, or if you push me within each frame, things should also be vibrating, should be, you know
Wow.
it's also like translation and rotation, like
Yeah.
the earth needs to translate is how you say it,
Yes. Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
around the sun, which would be narration,
Yeah.
but it also rotates, with could be the vibe of the film, the
Wow.
energy, the expressive territory, or
So there's sort of these two aspects and they're working with each other. That's so fascinating. And so when you're in post-production and you've watched something maybe 400 times, when you're editing, you've probably seen the film so much. How do you retain your objectivity? How can you sit there and say this scene is working? Does it ever get to the point where you've sat with it so much you just don't know if it's working or not because you don't have fresh eyes? Do you need to take a break from editing, or are you always able to sort of look at it with fresh eyes and be objective with your work?
Oh no, I wish.
No,
No, no, no, but I think you learn to listen to your
instincts.
body reactions.
Wow.
It's when you're listening to music and you go, ah, that's not that's out of tune, that's out of key. There's
Yeah,
something wrong in that music. Let's do it again. What is it that is not working? Then it's the melodies, you know. It's kind of like that with editing. It's like, ah, there's something wrong about that. Is it coming from the script? Is it a problem that has appeared because of the combination of things you're putting together? It doesn't matter the reason, but you have to hopefully have your antennas
yeah,
very active, and then be willing to, honor what the film has to be, and forget about get I mean, get out of the way of
yeah,
the film. Get
yeah.
get remove yourself away from the film, because the film is an entity on its own. Paradoxically, you are the one that are removing yourself and allowing this or that. You're still directing,
Yeah.
but it's easy. It can be easy to become your worst enemy if you become obsessed with things that should not be there for some reason.
Wow.
You know,
And that's
yeah,
fascinating because I've talked to a lot of filmmakers just about editing process because that's something I'm so fascinated in and something that I've sort of heard from even filmmakers like Christopher McQuarrie who directs the Mission Impossible films. Those are films, hundred millions of dollars budget. And what's fascinating about hearing him talk is that he almost describes editing as reductive, as film is in a lot of ways sort of reductive because you would think, you're constantly in editing, you're just adding and adding and adding. But really, he said a lot of it is you're just taking away and taking away and taking away. Would you agree with that sentiment?
absolutely. Oh yeah,
Wow.
yeah. It's a process of subtraction.
Yeah.
Is that a word when you take
Yeah,
out?
subtraction. Yeah.
Yes. So at the beginning, you will always have more that what the
Oh,
film needs, and then you need to know what is not vital.
yeah.
When they say kill your darling,
Yeah.
that's part of the same thing. I mean, it's like, I have a friend that likes to compare it with like having a human body,
Yeah.
and then you go, maybe we could lose. This will sound horrible, but understand that it's a
Yeah.
metaphor.
Okay.
Maybe we don't need the hand. Let's
Yeah.
take the hand out. Pah! And the body's still alive. So you need to know what to take out,
Yeah.
uh, and push it to the limit right before killing it.
Wow.
So eliminate, eliminate, eliminate to reach the maximum potential and expressiveness with the minimum amount of gestures or materials, if you want.
Yeah.
That makes
Wow.
sense?
Yeah. And what's
Mhm.
fascinating is you talk about kind of all of these aspects have to work alongside each other until you instinctually know that it's right and that it's working. But there's no sort of formula. There's no way to know. It's just this instinctual thing. And so you see filmmakers like Paul Thomas Anderson and M. Night Shyamalan, two great American filmmakers who found success very early on in kind of their first or second films. And you watch them in interviews and they sort of say that they didn't know how to make a film. They were trusting their instincts. And they didn't know necessarily maybe what a shot list was or about schedules, but it was just this process of trusting your instincts. And they
Sure.
said as they progressed, they actually wanted to return to that point of trusting their instincts. Where when they were making their earlier films, they actually felt a bit insecure because they didn't know what they were doing. But there
Mm.
was a great power in that sort of trusting your instincts. So, how
Mhm.
much of it is trusting your instincts? You know, even with your earliest films, are you trying to go back to a point of trusting your instincts, or have you always been able to sort of trust your instincts? And is that a battle at all with yourself?
Listen, at the beginning, when you haven't made any films, you have to trust your instincts, otherwise you would not do it.
Yeah.
Um, but then you learn that of course with the years and with experience, you learn about the craft, the the material aspect of the art, right?
Yeah.
Um, and then you understand that you might learn how to make films, but you will never know how to make the film you're making. It's not,
Ah,
I mean, you can know about the craft. You can have had the experience of having done 7 films, 9 films.
yeah.
But when you're making the film number 10,
Yeah.
you don't know how to make that one because that one presents its own challenges and its own problems, and you have to, so you're always in that state of trusting your instincts ultimately,
Wow.
even though your artisan skills,
Yeah.
is that a word?
Yes,
Artisan?
artisan. Yeah, yeah,
Yes.
yeah, yeah.
Artisan skills might be uh, larger than a few years ago. I once was I had the luck to meet Peter Weir, the Australian great
Oh,
director.
wow.
We were together in a jury in Istanbul, and I spent the entire week like trying to talk to him and going with him to the conferences, and I was like,
Yeah.
how do you do this? How do you do that? And I remember asking him because arguably Peter Weir has only done good or great films.
Yeah.
Most most of them are fantastic, and so he's a great artisan,
Yeah.
and so I asked him to try to answer your question from a different angle. I
Yeah,
said to
yeah.
him, but Mr. Weir, do you think of yourself as an artist? And he said, no. I mean, he said, art is an accident that happens sometimes that you stumble with due to your love for the craft.
Wow.
And I think he's right. You cannot start from the point of, I'm going to make a work of art. You can
Yeah.
only take care of the craft
Yeah.
of writing, of creating a set, of directing, of the mise en scène, of editing. Each time is craft,
It's this, yeah. Wow.
and then maybe that combination will, you know, generate a sort of sparkle that could be called art
Yeah.
by someone else. You know what I mean?
Wow, it's actually just there is this sort of I think tangible magic to when everything works. And I mean so much of film is collaboration. It's all these elements they have to work together.
Yeah,
Like it's
yeah.
funny. I heard a story about Bob Dylan outside of film, but one day he just sat down. He was in the recording studio and he's like, "It's gone. Whatever magic I had, it's gone. I don't know. I can't do this anymore." And he left and he went to a pub across town and he was drinking for an hour. And then all of a sudden it came back to him and he went back in and recorded. But I mean, I just think that's
So
so.
drinking could be a way of bringing the magic back
That's what I'm
sometimes.
trying to say, everyone. Well, I'm Irish, so maybe don't listen to me. Maybe that's
Well,
a
I'm
bit.
I'm I'm Chilean, and that's something that unites Ireland and Chile.
There you go. We have religion and alcohol. What more could you possibly need?
Exactly. And the fact that we are both somehow um, end of the world countries.
Yeah.
because
Wow.
Ireland was for a long time kind of like the end of
Yeah.
a world, and Chile is forever, and it will always be the end of the world.
Wow, that's so fascinating. I've never thought about it like that. Wow. Oh, and something else, I mean, I'd love to ask you. We talk about how every time you make a film, that's a process of discovery. And I think especially for you, it would be the case, because the wonder it's set in Ireland. It explores all these sort of Irish ideas, whether it's disobedience, which explores Judaism, or, the Jewish culture, or,
Yeah.
a fantastic woman, which explores, issues such as like transgender people and their lives. You're constantly going on this process of discovery, of kind of putting yourself into another world that's maybe not familiar with you. How important is that process of discovery? Is that integral to you as a filmmaker? Is that what attracts you to these sort of projects?
I think so, because I mean, I don't think I would be too excited or motivated if I had to write looking at my belly hole.
Yeah,
I mean, I I don't think my little world, I
yeah,
know it. I know it and I love it and I'm grateful for it, but I think that, you know, um, crossing a distance, creating a bridge or maybe a tunnel to observe a universe and characters that are not you, that are away from who you are, that are
yeah,
different, that think differently. Um, that makes me want to film them with a genuine interest.
yeah,
And I think from that encounter, um, maybe if you're lucky, you can find a few things
yeah,
about them, about yourself, and learn and grow. And yeah, all this new tendency that only the people that belong to a certain
culture.
social group or culture should tell those stories,
Yeah,
um, confuses me a lot,
yeah,
because I think everyone isn't entitled to tell any story. But then
yeah,
if you do it wrongly, if you fuck up,
yeah,
then you have to be willing to face public punishment, okay?
yeah,
But if you get it right, I don't see a problem. I think that could be good filmmaking.
yeah.
So that's why I'm always trying to expand my territories of exploration.
Wow. And it is sort of that tightrope. It's funny you talk about public humiliation because that's the risk every filmmaker faces.
Mm,
Whenever you make
mm,
anything, there's a very real possibility that you put this out there and people don't
absolutely.
like it. And that fear, I think, can be crippling for a lot of people. And
Yeah.
because it's a very revealing thing, filmmaking. And so do you kind of believe that when you put out the film, it almost doesn't belong to you anymore in a way? Because, when you made this film, you didn't know that a young 17-year-old with a big head who loved films would end up watching this film. You didn't know that there are people out there in the world who have seen your films and had different interpretations and different reactions. And
Mm.
what's that process, like? Is it revealing? Does the work still belong to you? Or all of a sudden, the second it's out there, does it belong to the audience?
I would say yes and no.
Yeah,
It does belong because you've dedicated sometimes 7 years to write, and release a film. So how could it not belong to you? But also, like, part of the deal is that you create a film and then you put it in the public
yeah,
arena, and then you hide behind the tree and see what is going to happen, and
yeah,
there's no way to know. And that's the
Wow.
beauty of it. There's no way to know. Um, and then you have to, follow the films where they take you. Sometimes they take you farther away than some
Yeah.
take you farther than others. But personally, before the releasing moment, they have taken me far away. They have changed me already because I've learned through them.
Wow.
Um, so I'm already like grateful
Yeah.
because, like Guillermo del Toro says, which I love, the natural state of a film is not to exist.
Yeah.
So the fact that I had the chance to make a film and that film exists and I have grown through it and I have learned about life and cinema
Wow.
and I can put it in the public arena, I'm grateful. Then if the thing, I don't know, explodes and people connect and
Yeah.
there is a lot of love and some hate, but who cares? Uh, well, more grateful, I
Wow.
think the biggest fear is not public um, condemnation,
Yeah.
but irrelevance.
Wow.
Spending all that time and then
Getting nothing from it.
nothing. No one. Doesn't move any needle, socially. And a film should move the needles of society. It should go wing, wing, wing. It
Yeah.
should it
I
should vibrate.
Yeah, that's back to a point I was talking
Yeah.
about. That is amazing. Wow. And I mean, like, you look at you as a filmmaker, you've had probably the two greatest honors a filmmaker can have. Well, winning the Academy Award and being interviewed by me. Obviously, these are the things that a lot of filmmakers aspire. No, I'm kidding, of course. But I would love to ask you, how necessary is failure for a filmmaker? I mean, I'm sure people look at you and then you look at the success you've had, but also they don't see kind of the years of trying to get a film made, the years of trying to find financing, the years of meetings, of talking to
Mm.
producers. How important is failure to the process? Is it integral as a filmmaker to be willing to fail and move on?
It's unavoidable, and it's
Really?
also it's not that sometimes you make a film that let's say fails because not much happens with it with
Yeah,
with the film. Um, like my first three films, I shot them in Chile with below guerrilla budget,
yeah,
and the first one did very well for its scale,
yeah,
so I could say it was a success. The second one was a little bit bigger and went to director's fourth night in Cannes, but no one saw it. And the third one was also very, very small and was seen by few people, but it's a film that is quite loved. Um, then I made Gloria, and which was my first real success in a more traditional sense of the word.
yeah,
So um, it's part of the journey, but also I think usually when you think of success or failure in filmmaking, you're usually thinking about the results of the film.
yeah,
But in the process of writing a film, shooting a film, you're constantly failing
yeah.
and then repairing. You're stumbling with failure and your lower aspects of yourself and your mediocrity and your
Ah,
prejudices, and you have to overcome that. So I think the relationship with failure is embedded in the creative process.
and
You
does
know
it
what I
get easy?
mean?
Yeah, does it get easier for you at all?
No, but the thing is that I recognize the parts of the ritual, like, oh, this is the moment
You've been here before, and
of the
you.
writing process when I go, this sucks, I'm an imposter, this
Yeah.
is not, and then, oh, well, this is when things start to work, and I'm gonna be over optimistic for a couple of months, and so on and so on, and so at least you recognize the sections of the process, and you let them be.
Wow.
In that sense, you trust the process,
Yeah.
you trust your instincts,
Wow.
uh,
And
and you believe that the process itself, and this, if there's sincerity and real interest and love for cinema and for what you're exploring thematically, it would be very rare that you don't end up with something that is alive,
yeah.
that has strength, you know?
Like there's a very real version, I think, of your story that probably ends after making two films that maybe didn't have the impact that you wanted. And there's probably a version that doesn't have the success that you've had now with the films. And I guess there's something to be said for perseverance. But it's funny you just talked there about sincerity. And something I've heard from so much filmmakers is really the one thing I feel it feels sort of reductive to try and say the one thing you need to make a good film is sincerity. But I think there is sort of a bit to be said to that, and I think almost that's the key in a lot of your work. And I don't. I would describe you, I think, as a humanist filmmaker. But then again, I think almost if you're a filmmaker, you're a humanist in some way. Like every filmmaker is a
Not
humanist.
always, not all.
Really?
There are some cases.
Do you think? Yeah.
um,
But would you accept that? Do you think that I mean, how important is having that empathetic view or just that fascination within people and not to necessarily like there's a version of The Wonder where there's a certain good guy and a certain bad guy, but everyone is human in it. And I don't want to say
mm,
there's not this gray area, you know. I mean the priests, I mean, if you're Irish, the idea of kind of the clergy or the clerical's relationship with Ireland, it's a troubled one and it's a historical one, and there's been ups and downs and ebbs and flows. And so there's a version of, I guess, The Wonder that painted it a bit more black and white, as in the good guy and the bad guy. But that just didn't seem what you're interested in. You seemed, because at the end of the day, they're all human and they're all people. And so is that a
yeah, I
very
mean,
conscious
listen,
decision?
I really love to see the work of some filmmakers whose approach is more distanced, and we could say maybe cynical,
Yeah,
that somehow are looking down at their characters, or some of them. And
yeah,
there's great art, great cinema that does that, you know. Um, but I don't know how to film a character or an actor
yeah,
playing a character if I don't find some angle to somehow be on their side and understand where they are coming
wow,
from, because
yeah,
it's all a collision of narratives, of points of views about the universe and the world and reality. And if there's something I'm against too, it's
yeah,
fanaticism,
yeah,
which is basically the people that have found the truth and are not willing to change their minds. They
yeah,
have arrived, therefore they are spiritually dead.
yeah,
Um, so even when I'm filming fanatics, like I did in The Wonder, because some of them are very fanatic,
yeah.
some
Brian
of the
F.
religious,
O'Byrne. You've Brian F. O'Byrne's character, who is,
up to the point to let a little girl die
yeah, and
because
he
of
just shuts it
their
down every time.
ideology,
Yeah,
because of their system of beliefs. But still, I sort of feel a connection, be, probably because I know that I try not to be a fanatic, but I cannot operate without a system of beliefs. I need to have mine.
yeah,
I try to keep myself alert and try to think for myself and not rely on in ideologies, uh, so the ideology can think for me,
Wow.
you know?
Yeah.
But I can totally understand how that could happen.
Yeah.
It happened to me when I was a young boy. I was Catholic by default
Yeah.
because I'm Chilean, but then I sort of like came out of that. So I was never a fanatic, but I've been there. I know how comfortable it is to have a model to inhabit the world, a world that is chaotic and that it might not have sense.
Yeah.
So religion plays a big part there. Political ideologies play a big part there. So I think I'm a filmmaker that is very interested in people.
Yeah.
I like people. And I'm also very interested in their belief systems,
Yeah.
in their intellectual constrictions, intellectual jails.
Yeah.
And some of them are not willing to even question that. But usually my protagonists are aware of the jail
Yeah.
and are able somehow to pay the price to break free from the previous
Wow.
um, belief system
Wow.
and to move forward towards a more complex one, a more embracing one, a belief system that is willing to embrace the complexity of realities and the complexity of living in a world where lots of people will think different things about reality. So it's very hard to
It's
get to
hard to almost
understand
articulate.
each
Yeah,
other,
yeah.
you know?
Yeah, and it's
Um,
funny. You look at spirituality in cinema. I mean, you look at the works of Dreyer to Tarkovsky, to Bergman. It's something to Scorsese and Schrader. It's something that you can almost track, whether it's in Russia or whether it's in Denmark or whether it's in America. It's something, and I almost feel like the reason for that is because inherently it's an unanswerable question. The idea of what that means to believe. And even
yeah,
in The Wonder, when he's confronted with a little girl will die. He's like, well, she's gone to heaven. So in his head, this is like, what are we talking about here? And so
exactly.
there's just this endless sort of dialect you can have with it. I mean, even in
And
or day, I don't know, you've probably Dreyer, he directed a film
I
called
mean, I made the wonder one of the main reasons to make the wonder was the resurrection scene,
Of course, but I was gonna say,
which is totally or dead, which is
yeah,
a film that I really love.
yeah,
So I was like, this is or dead territory. This is a Dreyer. But the wonder, trying to connect with what you were saying before, um, has this back endings, no? Opens up with a meta opening.
yeah, of course,
Hi, this is a film called The Wonder. The people you're about to meet, the characters, believe in their stories with complete devotion. No,
and you buy into it.
we are nothing without stories.
Yeah,
And so we invite you to live in this one. And then the camera pans and it's like, there is a nurse,
of course,
an English nurse, and you're into it.
yeah,
And I think what I was trying to do is to say, look at the power of fiction. Whatever you believe in
yeah,
is the thing, the entity, the collective entity that you're giving power to.
yeah.
And the power of fiction is so great that you will fall into the trap of fiction in three, two, one, puff, and
Wow.
you're in. And that's how politics work, and that's how ideologies work, and religion works. You accept to believe in
Yeah.
that system of belief. But any contemporary human being should have the tools to create distance from any belief and
Yeah.
to see it from outside and identify it as thought.
Yeah.
And thought can be changed, can be modified, is perfectible. So we should not become too obsessed with any truth. We should always be in flux.
Yeah,
That's more or less why I made The Wonder, and I think that connects with my other films as well, in
it's
terms of the
it's
thing that
just
we were talking
amazing.
about, that they move to, they fight to go against the established
Yeah.
narrative, you know?
Oh, I mean, I could talk about why I love The Wonder all day. I remember I saw that. I'm in awe of that film. But what I love most, like at the start of the film, you start asking yourself the question, well, is this girl telling the truth? And that's what the idea becomes to you. But by the time this resurrection happens, it's like that's not the question anymore. You know, you've almost lost that. It's all of a sudden you're just witnessing these characters in their beliefs, and it's just this amazing shift that I didn't even realize happened until it happened. You know, I spent the first
Right.
half of the film thinking, oh, is she telling the truth or not? And then by the time, we get some, I mean, I wouldn't even say it's semblance of an answer, but by the time we see it, that's the furthest thing from your mind. And it's just, it's amazing.
Mm,
But I mean, I'd love
mm.
to ask you, what was it
Thank
like?
you.
Oh, no problem, sir. I promise you, I could talk all day about this film, but I think I'll save some of the people watching. What was it
It makes
like?
me, it gives me, it calms me to know that when anyone from Ireland says they like the film, I'm like, you know,
Yeah, man.
precisely because what we were talking before.
Yeah,
Because you could say, who are you to come here and tell the story, a story about related to the famine and
yeah,
our story? And I'm like, I'm no one. I'm
yeah,
from Chile. I'm interested in this. And I lived in a little green town in the south of Chile under a Catholic macho dictatorship. So I
yeah.
kind of know this. I kind
Wow.
of understand this. That was my way in. This is this is the country where I lived when I was this is the town where I lived when I was little. I'm just going to take what I know and try to explore it within the Irish context, but
Yeah.
also honoring, you know, tradition in there and history, and educating myself about the period. And of course, I didn't become an expert in
No way.
Ireland, but I did become an expert in the wonder. You
Wow.
know?
And I mean, Chile and Ireland love drinking, so we had that as well. You know, you came here, you felt right at home.
Yeah, there is a connection between Irish people and Chilean people. Every time I
That's
meet Irish people,
amazing.
it's like it's really easy.
Wow. Wow, that is so
Yeah.
fascinating. I've never heard that. I mean, I'm gonna carry that on with me now. I don't want to take up too much time, so my last couple of questions, if that's okay, if I could. Um,
Yes.
I mean, I'd love to ask you. Something I just noticed through your works is visually, every film feels different. It feels unique, and so what I kind of know is just while researching is that a lot of times you work with different cinematographers and different directors of photography. What's that process like? Because there's a lot of filmmakers who feel comfortable with a certain cinematographer, but for me, it's funny. You watch each of your films, and they almost feel like by a totally different director in a lot of ways because there's that
Yeah.
language and relationship between director and cinematographer. And I hope when I say direct, it feels like it's by a different director. I hope you don't take offense. I of course mean that
No,
in a great
I
way.
know what you mean.
Yeah,
Listen, I love all sorts of cinema, and as well as filmmakers. Like my altar is very pagan. I don't know
yeah,
if you've seen these people that have altars with Ganesh, Buddha,
yeah, yeah,
Christ, and then an ovni, a UFO, and then maybe a rock, and
yeah,
a saint. And it's quite polytheist in a
yeah,
certain
yeah,
way. I'm like that with film. I'm not a purist at all. I don't follow one line, and I do admire a lot for different reasons. Some of my favorite filmmakers are the ones that have been capable of exploring exploring different narrative territories or genres, if you want.
yeah.
For example, Kubrick.
Of course.
You know,
Oh,
he-
of course. Every film.
Fantastic war films, revolutionized science fiction, revolutionized horror. I mean, he was always changing
Yeah.
the territory, but it was always him.
It was,
The same
yeah.
with Lars von Trier has that as well, which is
Yeah.
something I really love about him. He can make a musical, then he can make, you know, Dogville,
Yeah.
an essay, theatrical, philosophical type of exploration. Then he can make horror, like Antichrist, or a
Jack.
philosophical sci-fi-ish, like
Yeah.
Melancholy, or porn. Like,
Yeah.
you know, that's to me,
Everything.
there's something so fascinating about that approach to the problem of cinema as something that is explorable from many different angles. You
Yeah.
know,
Wow.
that's why I made a musical, because I'm into that
Yeah.
same attempt,
And there was,
humbly,
I'm sure there was,
humbly, because
I'm sure there was a discovery as well making a musical, you know, which is, I mean, that's just, there's something so cinematic about musicals. I mean, you know, you look at the earliest Singing in the Rain, Gene Kelly, Fred Astaire, you know, that's kind of the pinnacle, I think, of a lot of cinema is, you know, there's something so cinematic about, you know, in my mind, genres, to put it broadly, the two genres that I guess are the most cinematic are horror and musical, you know, and they're like on complete opposite ends of the spectrum. And so, what
that's really interesting, because I really think that's probably true.
really?
And I think, because, you know, Scorsese says that if you don't understand the beauty of horror in film, you
Yeah.
don't understand film.
Yeah. Yeah, of course.
And and musicals are so meta, are so artificial, that it's also something that, of course, it comes from theater and opera, but when it's taken by cinema, there's something about the the capturing the movement that
Yeah.
is so essential to cinema, taken to a place of exuberance or splendor, that is really cinematic. And it doesn't have to always be about celebrating or evading, which is the tendency of the golden Hollywood era in musicals.
Yeah.
It can also be more Brechtian, you know, more political, like Dancer in the Dark is the Lars von Trier
Of
film,
course.
which is one of my favorite musicals in history. I love Singing in the Rain as well, but I really love Dancer in the Dark, you know.
Of
So
course.
yeah, I think there's a lot of cinema there in both areas, but also sci-fi. Huh? Sci-fi is
Oh,
as well.
I mean, how could we forget? So does that mean
Exactly.
we're going to get a sci-fi and a horror film from you in the next few years? Is that what you're teasing at?
A horror seems closer than a sci-fi,
Really?
but it is one of my hopes that at some
Wow.
point someday I have the chance to find the right
Yeah.
vessel to explore cinema through science fiction.
Wow. And so
Yeah,
how many projects do you normally have at a time that you're working on? Does it vary, or is there always like at least one that you're kind of actively pursuing?
for sure. There's always at least one,
Yeah,
but
yeah.
it's usually three or four
Wow.
different stages,
If
you
yeah,
know.
of course, of course.
Because
Yeah.
otherwise, if you end the film and you need to start writing from scratch, you wouldn't make a film in 6 years.
Yeah.
But if you keep moving, you know, it's not that I want to film one film per year, but one each 2 years, it starts to become healthy
Wow.
and good, you know.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
yeah,
That's terrific. And so before we finish up, is there anything you can tell us about the way, I mean, obviously not much, but your next film, La Ola, what is there even anything you can say just that people can keep an eye on it? It'll probably be coming later this year.
yeah. It's We don't have a tradition of musical filmmaking in Latin America.
Yeah.
It's a genre that has been made usually from very robust and strong industries. You know, the United States, England, France, even India. But our industries in Latin America tend to be very fragile, especially in Chile, which is a small country. So we don't have, it's too expensive for us. So
Yeah.
there's not musical film tradition nor know-how
Yeah.
in terms of how to do it.
Wow.
So I think La Ola, the wave, has that audacity or maybe irresponsibility, irresponsible approach to of saying we're going to make a musical from here and we'll do it our way, even though we don't have the tradition. So we'll find our solution with our level of knowledge, and we'll try to, you know, um, create an exercise of politics, aesthetical splendor, scale, and cinematic freedom
Oh
through
man.
through this vehicle. So
Oh.
that's the thing.
I
That's
think I
more or
think
less the attempt.
I think you should show me it now just so I can tell everyone how good it is. That sounds absolutely amazing. I'm so excited. The idea of you doing a musical just excites me because I mean, if I could, one of the last things I would say, another one of the reasons I love your films is because they're very unironic in a way. When you try and picture something, it's empathetic and you're expressing it. Like Guillermo del Toro tells a story about David Lynch. In Blue Velvet, when he shows the roses and the birds, that's not David Lynch being ironic. He genuinely believes it's beautiful. And so when I watch your films, I
Yeah.
just feel like you genuinely photograph things you find beautiful, and that sincerity comes through. So the idea of you doing a musical, I'll be there. I'll be there opening day. Sir,
Thanks, Daniel.
before we finish up, what advice would you have for anyone looking to become a filmmaker?
Um, I would say that, you know, if you feel that you can express what you're wanting to express through film, through any other artistic form of expression, and you would be okay with that, let's say writing a novel or a short story or writing a song or doing it in the form of theater or stand-up comedy, don't even try to do cinema. If the only way for you to express what you need to express is the language of cinema, and it's unavoidable because your reverence and love for that medium
Yeah.
is so big, then you can depart um, towards the uncertain,
Wow.
and uh, and you have to be willing to face the eventuality of not being able to make it. But still, if you love it that much, then you might stumble with 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 the beauty of making films.
God, wow. I mean, you hit the absolute nail on the head, sir. I think you just put it perfectly. Before we finish up, I don't think you're on social media. There's nothing you can promote. Anything people should go check out or keep an eye on coming up soon? Probably just the wave
Not
being the big one.
I think I'm gonna reactivate my Twitter and my Instagram for the wave
Oh,
because
amazing.
I
Yeah.
want to share some things. But for now, I'm silent in terms of social media. So
Trust me, sir, it's definitely for the best. Everyone, keep an eye on La Ola slash The Wave. I'll talk to you a little bit off air. This has been my interview. Sir, thank you so much for taking the time. What a pleasure it's been getting to chat with you. Like I'm sure you can all tell, this interview has been so special. Just I feel like I've just gotten a film school class. So yeah, sir, thank you so much for taking the time. Everyone,
thank
thank you
you,
for watching. Thank you
thank
so
you,
much.
Daniel. Congratulations for making this creating this space at such a young age, and also thank you for a great conversation as well.
Oh, sir, thank you. I hope I managed to keep up. Hearing you talk was like, I was like, oh man, this guy is, he's up there. So thank you, sir. And thank you all so much for watching.